Zuckerberg is a psychopath. He's like...
We're like live everywhere now.
Hi,
Nice.
hello, welcome. Welcome to this week's podcast. We are missing Faith this week due
She's
to
working.
work obligations, but we're here. We're here nonetheless, and
We're missing Sean too.
we're missing Sean still.
Because he doesn't want to come back.
'Cause, yeah, he doesn't want to come back.
Not to the podcast, just Oklahoma.
Yeah, even though he's gonna have to by August, you know. I guess he just is putting it off. But anyways, we have us three. We're here, and today our topic is going to be science in religion. I know we kind of mentioned that half-heartedly last week, mainly because we weren't sure if that was actually going to come together, but I actually got prepared for once.
Woo!
And prepared
It's a
a
historical
podcast.
moment.
Yeah, believe it or not, all the other ones I've led have been on the spot.
No, you're not supposed to say
Shocking.
that.
I mean,
You're not supposed to say that.
they weren't
They were prepared well in advance.
prepared well enough in advance so I could have them memorized. Yeah, so hopefully this one might run a little bit smoother. But okay, first question: what is science? Define
Science.
Science is a lot of things. It's like it's a combination of what math and
Science, I feel like science is kind of like the study of the natural world. Like physics, natural world, kind of like the properties of the natural world,
well,
biology.
there's also like quantum
world,
physics, and that's like all theory and stuff like that.
but
I
still
don't know.
natural.
It's mainly just probably just a reason to explain things that you see around you.
it. So it's a live explanation. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, how I was thinking about it in preparation is, I really consider science more of a process or methodology of discovering. I guess it kind of goes with yours, which is more of a way to explain something. But I don't think science is necessarily like one thing or idea, but it's a way of approaching something or way to figure something out. And then I have the Google definition. The intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. Yeah.
I would
so-
like some kudos for that.
Kudos.
I'm very on par with Google. You guys can be thanks. You guys can be on par with each other. Me and Google are like this.
I mean-
Okay.
I mean, this was also kind of backing us up through observation and
Okay, we're all right.
experiment. Yeah, okay, and I wanted to establish that first, so we don't go talking about individual things. I know what a lot of those things are, which I wanted to establish that before this next question, especially, that says, is it contrary to our beliefs as Christians, Adventists, etc.,
Is what?
churchgoers? Is science contrary to our beliefs as Christians, Adventists, churchgoers, whatever?
I think the only time it really conflicts with each other is like when you mention like how to prove God and like how to prove that He's real and stuff like that, because that's the only part like where the church and science don't agree. That and evolution, but
Yeah. And I will touch on that again later. And just thinking of, just also think of it in the way of how you defined it, as such your definition. Does that definition go against the teachings or beliefs of the church?
not really, unless you see God as science, because a lot of church goers and people that are like Christian and such like to use him to explain things that go on, such as miracles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And science pretty much works with him or against him, like trying to explain why stuff like that does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Can you restate the definition?
Just the Google one?
Or anyone?
It's the observation and characterization of the natural world through study and experiment.
I mean, I guess if we're going with like the observation portion of the definition, kind of like the Bible, I would say like it's to a certain extent, I think it'd be like an observation, kind of. It's like an observation of like events, whether like they're provable by science or not, like just like an observation, like a record of events. So they happen in the natural world. So
Yeah.
I guess in that aspect, it's not really contradictory.
Yeah, and I definitely wouldn't say that it's contradictory because there's that verse. I probably should have looked this up beforehand, but there's the verse that says.
You mean you
know,
don't have the Bible on your phone?
I do, but I just don't know where it's found. But it's the verse. It's relatively famous, but it talks about, God can be seen through nature, and I don't think that that just means the trees, the grass, flowers, animals, blah, blah, blah. I think that means, like, everything, like natural world, like the structures and everything like that. So I don't think it's contradictory. And thinking as science more of a methodology or an approach to a topic, I definitely don't think so because, multiple times in the Bible, God has said, like, to test him, right? You have the story of Gideon, and then there's, the verse in the Bible that talks, ask and you shall receive. And I know that, a lot of the times, a lot of people say just have faith, but at the same time, he also wants a relationship, so how are you going to build a relationship off of no experience? And in order to kind of do that, I feel like you kind of have to almost take that step and to say, hey, are you real? Testing, through a at least semi-scientific method.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so then in the next one it says, very along the same lines, very much so, saying, does it support our beliefs?
Does science support our beliefs as Christians? Would you like to go first?
I mean, I can, but I was just thinking because I've already thought some of this through in preparing it, but...
Okay, hold on, I need a second. Let me think.
Okay, we will wait. You got anything?
What was the question again?
Does it support our beliefs? Is it contrary to some?
I think it depends on what you consider like science, because there's the theory of evolution, which doesn't support our belief, but yeah. Then there's also just a bunch of things that do, like first thing that comes to my mind is how gender is something physical. It's not like something you can change, really.
Your sex.
Mhm.
Physical sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I really think of. Like, that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
I think science is like, did you say it like supports our beliefs?
Yeah, does it?
Does it support our beliefs? I think if you want to like look into certain like instances, such as like the Noah's Ark thing, where like scientifically, if like the carbon dating on an object, like they use like the carbon dating on some objects to like determine its like how long it's been around, so that's where like the millions and millions and trillions of years came along. But if we like put it in context of the Bible, things like the Great Flood might have eroded them at like a faster rate.
Like
I think
the
just
Grand Canyon, too.
like stuff like that, we could use science to support our beliefs, or that could also be used to refute our beliefs, I guess. I'm not really sure that much. I'm not like a scientist. But
Well, I personally think that, for the most part, it does. Because, and I think I touched on this. If not, I meant to touch on this in my questions here. But, I think that, like, a lot of the times when you get digging into things really and unbiased, that a lot of the times, well, first off, there's like there's chances and everything like that, but I think too that because our beliefs as Christians aren't necessarily contrary, like directly, like head on with with actually like all of proven scientific facts, since ours, aren't going against that in any way, really. I think that's almost a support, to say, hey, these, as some people would call them, ancient stories, well, hang on, they're actually lining up with a lot of, and I mean, I know that's almost an easy thing to say, just because the Bible doesn't talk about science, necessarily. It doesn't lay out how atoms are put together, or, why people stay on Earth, and, all of that stuff. But I think that because, we have something to back us up, and we can go and test something, so to speak, without fear of us being proven wrong, right? Because, and this is something, I guess I'll just touch on it now, but what makes the theory of evolution how it is, and why isn't creation, or no, what makes the theory of evolution and cosmology and all of these theories that seem to directly contradict the Bible, what makes all of those theories work against the Bible?
What makes them work? What?
So, like, at what point in the research and study of the theory of evolution, cosmology, I'm thinking to a lot of the origin sciences, or, some other areas, at what point in the process does that, seem to turn against God?
Well, I think if there's like an origin, because like their theories, okay, but then again, like whenever a lot of like Christians use like the refuting evolution thing, they say, oh, well, they're all theories. This is the theory. So creation is also a theory, but just like as a basis, I think it's important to realize that when like scientists, because this is how like the outside viewing in sees that argument, like when scientists create theories, or like whenever a theory is like appointed as a theory, it's come after like a lot of experiments and scientific process and things. So like theory is not used in the same way that it's used in like a societal standpoint. But I don't know. When evolution and cosmology and stuff like that, when does it contradict the Bible? I think if there's like something that has an origin, that has an explanation that's other than the origin of like God, because like that's the origin in creationism, it kind of just contradicts already, right?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, at what point in the process, is it during the carbon dating, is it during the readings, or is it during the conclusion drawings, is it going into the experiment that it was already determined? At what point at that process to where you are going to the theory, at what point in that does it, seem to be flipped against or contrary? Against is like, I feel like that's more the wrong word, but when is it turned contrary to God or biblical beliefs, teachings, etc.?
Trying to find a way to put this, but
Shoot.
I think it comes at the point whenever they refute God's existence just because they don't believe in God, not because it's a possible solution. Like, they see the Big Bang as the start of everything, but that could just be God. Like, there isn't always one answer, and they just rule that out completely just because I feel like most scientists just don't believe in God for the reason that, because it wouldn't line up with their views, just how most Christians and other believers in faith don't believe in evolution because it doesn't agree with their views on how the world started. So just neither of them really want to accept the other as a possibility because it doesn't agree with their thoughts.
So you're saying like going into the experiments, that was predetermined, that they were going to find
I feel like it's probably just bias because they don't believe in God, so they don't see him as an option.
And I feel like that's true in a lot of cases, especially when we're talking about evolution. I feel like, and I could be totally wrong on this, but I just feel like that the study of cosmology and like physics and all that tends to be a lot more unbiased, just because
it's more math. And
it's more math. It's just hard evidence, hard numbers. But I was just thinking about this. If a totally unbiased researcher, he has all of these things. It really seems like when it comes to the conclusion and time to interpret the data, right? To where it really becomes evolution, because as Christians we can look at the fossil record or whatever and see all of these millions of years, and we could say, okay, I interpret that as cause of the flood, some other external force acting on it, possibly supernatural force acting on it. When it comes to evolutionists, they look in this and say, okay, well then that must mean this fossil really is from 65, 70, 100, however so million years ago, right? We could be given the same evidence and draw different conclusions from them.
And also from what we know, that the Earth has always been here. It was just without form. That's what it says in the beginning.
And that's also a matter of interpretation, right? Because a lot of people, they could interpret that differently as the Earth was not here and there was nothing, and if there's nothing, therefore there's no form or whatever. But then also formless could just mean, not in the right shape. Maybe it was a cloud of dust, whatever.
Maybe the particles spread really far out.
Yeah.
But
it's all just, to me, it all just seems like, it feels like it's all interpretation. We're given the data, given the sets of evidence, and then that's really where the divide comes from, is when it comes time to interpret the evidence.
But also drawing like from your point, it could be the interpretation, but I also feel like we're getting our research, thinking of a research project. If scientists and creationists or whatever, not that creationists aren't scientists, but if people are trying to research where the Earth came from and how everything started, and they have to look for resources, outside resources of information, and draw conclusions from that information. So we have history, and that's information that's a shared resource. But then creationists also draw from the Bible as a resource. But evolutionists draw from different scientific things. I'm not sure what they draw from, but I feel with the historical evidence and all that stuff which we share as a resource, we also both parties draw from separate sources of information, and I think that's where a divide can come as well, because a lot of people don't see the Bible as a
history book,
a reliable source of scientific information, which I think that's where the problem comes from. Is the Bible a scientific reliable source or no?
Yeah. And I think that also comes down to a lot of bias, like Trevor was saying, in the very beginning, when you start going into it and you start trying to tackle a lot of these big issues, problems, questions that we have, is that, as much as we try to eliminate bias, we're all human at the end of the day. So completely doing that it's almost futile, if I go into a study of, let's say, an origin of everything, origin of Earth, origin of life on Earth, something like that, right? I'm a Christian beforehand, so I'm obviously going to go into it with a mindset of, okay, how did God do this? Or what happened? But as much as I try to eliminate that, that's always...
You're just trying to prove your own point.
Yeah.
You aren't trying to find the actual solution, which it's hard to do if you don't have a base to start at. And just like what I said earlier, people with religious backgrounds will start with God or their version of God and how their religious text said the world was created, so they'll start there and they'll research that. And then evolutionists will start at their God, which is science, and try and backlog like all the carbon dating and evolution and try and find the answer there.
I also think that's like a really good point, the bias, the confirmation bias, because that also, I feel like from an outside standpoint can kind of lower the credibility of some creationists. Like, I always like to think, like, as a Christian who, like, believes in creationism, obviously, I like to think about how, like, outside people would view inside, because then it will help me understand, like, how to bridge the gap. So thinking about how, like, outside people view creationism, that confirmation bias, if creationists are, like, aiming to prove creationism, they have an outside agenda that they're working towards, like proving the Bible, proving Christianity, proving God's real. Like, that's like a agenda. So confirmation bias is always there, and from the scientific community standpoint, it always knocks down your credibility a notch. Like, that's something my teacher was talking about. So that's always a problem. So that might be why.
Okay,
that
so,
might be some, like, kind of conflict.
So why does the world, or I hate saying the world, but at the same time it's
why is
so
society?
why does the non-Christian, non-religious scientific community look at the Christian, religious, creationist scientific community with such disdain, or see them as having less credibility than them, or even outside atheist people look at?
Well, one is obviously their agenda, like
Yeah.
their confirmation bias. I think the willingness to believe in God, or like not believe in God, because most scientists don't care if you believe in God as long as you don't bring him into like your science or like your research or something, because it's, to them, I guess, it's like using like something that they have not been able to like prove or like understand as like a foundation of your theory and like a foundation of your experiment, which I guess to them is kind of like against the rules. Like, you like, for the basis of your experiment you need something like concrete.
You could almost say God is unfalsifiable then, or cannot be proven.
Yeah.
And so to them it's almost like you can't explain it, oh God. Almost like a get out of jail free card. Like I don't have to explain it because there's God. You know?
Yeah, it causes a little circular reasoning in a lot of instances.
Yeah. But that's something I wanted to touch on. So, you know, where does God fit at all into a picture of evolution, of, you know, I don't like saying it, but, you know, like worldly science, quote unquote. I don't like using that term.
Secular.
I think so. I think it could be sort of like how the Bible was inspired. Like, he inspired people to write stuff down.
Oh, so it's
he possibly could have inspired
like
them.
evolution or Big Bang, or
I don't know, but it's possible. Like, he could have just inspired like formulas and stuff like that, giving them inspiration to help understand the world. I don't know exactly how it works. No one really does. So it's possible he could have done that, but that also could have been something that Satan might have inspired. Just to combat God and his ideas. But.
Or it could just be like human curiosity. Like, we always see in the Bible, like, humans get super curious and then we get in over our head, like the Tower of like Babel or something like that. And like
that
Darwin,
seems more like human importance than curiosity, but
that's true. But like Darwin, who is like the creator of like the theory of evolution, right? Charles Darwin, he he had his like theory and stuff, but then he also like refuted it later in life. But like other people ran with it, which is fine. But that like leads me to believe that he was like experimenting with it, and like it's just human curiosity. Like, everybody has the right to be curious.
Yeah. So does God fit into the picture at all?
I mean, he gave us the right to be curious. Like, he gave us the right.
Like, okay, looking at this from an outside standpoint, right? Outside of the church, outside of Christianity, where does God stand? Does he stand? Is he able to stand because is he real, or is he?
They
or does it
probably
matter?
just don't believe in God, or if they do, just not in the importance of God.
Yeah. So like what is it, like agnostic, or
Oh, agnostic.
yeah,
Like,
where they're like God's real, but I don't know anything about him. Isn't that what it is? Maybe.
atheist is that God's not real. Agnostic is like there's a possibility, but
Oh.
it's like not. I
Yeah.
think that's what it like. I'm not refuting the idea, but I don't think he's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also one like
Well, and there's
where-
also deism, where it's like God set everything in motion and just got it.
Yeah.
alive.
Dipped.
Oh.
Peace, you guys figure it out by yourselves.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that's what like some of the founding fathers like of America believed. Was
Maybe.
deism. But I don't know if that's true. Don't quote me on that.
The conspiracy.
But we often look to like philosophy and stuff. I know a lot of people look at like in the church look at that and say, oh, they like just take a step back at the word philosophy. Oh, that's so evil. But
You can't open your mind. That's meditation.
opening your mind lets the
It's
devil-
dangerous.
But yeah, which I mean, like a lot of, and I feel like a lot of that is kind of targeted. Oh my goodness, targeted. But because we have Christian philosophies and all that. But there is good reason to be wary of some philosophies. Like there's the philosophical razor is what it's called, but it's known as Newton's flaming laser sword. I'm not making that up. That's an actual thing.
Sick.
But it basically says if something can't be experimented on and proven true, why even talk about it? Why does it matter to discuss? And that's basically what it said, and that's been, even though it was only relatively recently given that title and given that official, like, kind of place in this philosophic/scientific or scientific philosophy community, that gray area in between, even though that was only recently given its like official title and stuff, that's been a guiding factor in science and research forever. It's basically just dismisses unfalsifiability, which to some extent it's good because, I know we've probably all heard Mr. A talk about the Pyrrhon guy, which, that was when the spontaneous combustion thing was going around, and, one guy came forward and said, oh, it's pyrons. And they're like, what are pyrons? They're these invisible, undetectable particles that are in the human body that have a chance of just causing the human to randomly burst into flames. But you couldn't prove it wrong because they're undetectable. But you can't prove it right because you can't prove it wrong. And almost the same could be said about God, right? Because we have our ways in faith. Faith is what tells us, basically, right? And even the Bible says faith is the hope in things faith is the hope in things unseen.
There it is.
Right?
Yeah.
So even the Bible says, you can't see God, which, and I interpret that as not just visibly eye to eye see God, but as touch him, smell him, hear him.
He's intangible.
Yeah. So, I feel like in the scientific world, that's like, okay, so if you can't do that, what's the point?
I have
Why are you talking about it? But
I have two things. One is like an example. I feel like that is true, the circular reasoning thing, but also like sometimes there are things that like our version of truth in science is constantly changing and modifying itself and evolving. It's constantly like changing. Like I think of the mRNA vaccine, the COVID vaccine. The lady who actually like built the model for the mRNA vaccine, I don't remember her name, I just learned about her though. She was like refused tenure at her university and like knocked down a notch because people were like, that's stupid, why would you do that, you can't do that, it's not gonna work, blah 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 blah. And then she collaborated with either Pfizer or Moderna, and created the COVID vaccine. So like stuff that is like impossible can become possible with like the advancement in science and technology and blah 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 blah.
Sounds like the half-life of knowledge.
Yeah, like the circle of knowledge. Like once your circle grows, like once you get older, your circle of not knowing grows.
I think the term is actually called the half-life of knowledge. Like it's the time that it takes for findings in one field on average to be replaced with a better theory. So like a couple years ago, I don't remember what year, but there was the estimated half-life of knowledge in the field of psychology was 5 years. Mm-hmm. So that basically said, on average, most of the things in psychology are going to be replaced within 5 years with better theories. But yeah, sorry.
Very interesting. But yeah, that happens all the time. And the second thing is, I don't know if I should be saying this, but
we can always say it.
But like, honestly, a lot of Christians are like super hung up on trying to like scientifically prove that God is real and he exists, and like we're gonna stick it to the scientific community and blah 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 blah, like all that stuff. Honestly, I think stop. Like God is something that you need faith to believe in, right? He says it in the Bible, like you're not gonna know when I come, you're not gonna like really see me, me, like I'm not gonna be able to be touched or whatever. You need faith to believe in God. Like faith is the most important thing. So, like, I don't think there's ever going to be a method where we can, like, scientifically, like, prove God exists, like, through tangible evidence, because that's not how the God thing works. Yeah. Like, that's not how the God thing works. And so, like, I don't think we're ever going to go, like, head-to-head with the scientific community and win through their means, because, like, honestly, I don't think that science and God thing mix, because science is, like, a tangible evidence human curiosity thing, and that's fine because humans were made to be curious, but God is like a thing you need faith for, and that's always going to be like a certain.
Yeah, and I remember we were talking about this on the on one of the ones you weren't here for, but it was the one where we were talking about like the fourth dimension and all that. Remember, we kind of talked about the supernatural and untestable. Like, so if there was a fourth dimension, we could never step into the fourth dimension, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Much less come back to describe it to, there's a fourth dimension? What does it look like?
It's undescribable.
Yeah.
Because it's a whole different
It's
way.
incomprehensible.
And so, and that's one of the things I think, like I totally agree with you on the faith part, because for me, I was, just thinking about the concept of free will too. If we were able to prove God as, this is an absolute fact, don't you think a lot of people would be like, well, now I have to accept that God is real, and, now the Bible's real, and now I don't really have a choice to believe. I don't have a choice. Hang on.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like you've taken away somebody's freedom of choice.
Yeah, and also, like, why would we need to go and make disciples if there's, like, a fact? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I want to, like, go and... Sorry, I flicked my nail. But if somebody wants to go... If I'm trying to, like, go and convince you of something and, like, make you my disciple, and, like, God says you should, like... Or Jesus was like, you should commune with them and, like, talk with them and, like, help them build up their relationship, too. Or, like, anything like that. Why... Or, like, my relationship with God in general, even. Like, why do I need to, like, work and build up that relationship and suffer with that relationship if there was, like... some quantifiable, tangible, all like non-refutable fact that I could just believe. It's not that simple. It's not that easy, or else everybody would do it.
Jesus wouldn't have given teachings. He would have given, go tell these people why I'm real.
Yeah.
Give them these pamphlets. Or you still give out pamphlets, but
please don't give them the pamphlets. Don't give them the pamphlets.
But go send a copy of this textbook to every school, and then you don't have to do anything after that. Like, now that
it's too easy.
Well, that's pretty much what the Bible is.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, it is, but not to the same extent as like.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
1 + 1 = Jesus.
And here's why. But I think we just. Yeah, I think we
Do
kind
we
of
not
just.
clear your questions?
Yeah,
You're welcome.
We kind of got to the last one was, how do we know as Christians that God is real? We've already kind of touched on its faith. You know?
Yeah, pretty much. One of the other things I like to use is that every culture has had some kind of God,
Yeah.
at least one, like all over the world. That can't be something that just happens unless the only other reason I can come up for this is like it's because it's too advanced and they didn't understand it, so they just use God as the explanation. Like how the crops grow because of the sun god, because he gives them power and all that stuff, and like the river god waters them, but yeah, people could see that as like just primitive, like just basic, because they didn't understand how like weather patterns or stuff like that worked, so they just use gods as an example. But I just like to think of that as, with how many different cultures there are and how many different types of gods there are, there's probably just some kind of mix out there that has to be true. And it probably has to include science in there too, because that's also seen as a god today.
Because also, like, I know people, like, there's this thing where, like, people hate religion. Okay, there's no, I just want to, like, this is very controversial.
Disclaimer. Trigger warning.
Please stop with the Christian victim complex. It's so cringy. But we're not going to touch on that. This is a different topic. There's, like, this, like, theory that, like, if there's, like, assuming that there's no God, where did religion come from? Well, some person just, like, came and was like, I want to mess with these people's brains. Like, I want to get some power
like
right
a
now.
cultist,
Yeah, like
much.
Power. Huh?
Like a cultist?
I guess. But, like
that's pretty much their thing.
Yeah, or
It's
like
just-
a divine rule, like somebody who
Yeah.
wanted to be ruler would come along and be like,
yeah, like,
I
it's
have
because
a-
God said
yeah.
so. My God.
Which
But
that was
then-
something we touched on last episode. Go watch it if you haven't.
But then, like, I kind of, like, wonder, which, like, it's not impossible because humans are impossible. A lot of crazy ideas. But how would you even think of that? Like, if there was no concept of God, no concept whatsoever, and, like, I was, like, made from an amoeba and, like, a little, like, weird sea creature, like, that crawled on the land and, like, became a monkey, and now I'm a human, and now I'm capable of, like, critical thinking. Where would that thinking come from? Like, how would I come up with that?
And that's where like deism comes in. Deism attempts to be the medium between evolution and creation. Is God made all this? God set everything into motion, but everything happened exactly like we understand it. Which I think that's also one thing too, that I think why we're so reluctant as a society or as a world to accept God is because we have a sense of self-importance, maybe not individual, but species or culture or societal importance, that, you know, we are the top dogs of Earth, which that may be true, like with the species we see roaming, you know, like humans are top of the food chain, whatever you want to call it. So therefore, we should know everything, right? So there shouldn't be something that's necessarily out of our reach. And if it is, that's because it's out of everybody's reach. It's not our fault. You know, it's kind of from a sense of self-importance, and we don't want to acknowledge that we're not the top because it feels good to be at the top.
Also, though, like, if we're going the route of, like, why people don't like to believe in religion, which is kind of off topic, but we finished our topic anyways. We, like,
Speaking of,
I've heard.
We're at 40 minutes, so we can wrap it up.
oh, okay.
This
Keep
last
going.
one thing, and it's gonna be a really horrible stopping point, but like, I heard a lot of people be like, yeah, for next week, why don't people like God? No, I hear a lot of people voice a concern with, like, religion, like, why should I have to adhere to, like, this mean God's, like, every rule, like, every incredibly
When,
like every like, and he's like he gets angry all the time and like smites me, and if I don't obey him, I'm gonna like burn for eternity in hell. Like, why should I have to do that? That doesn't seem fair. I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to. Like, that's a lot of people's standpoint, which is understandable. Like, if you think about it from their point of view, it's like understand why
without the proper like digging into it, because that's what it looks like at a surface level. So it's understandable. Yeah.
But like, that's what I was just about to say. Because like, God is kind of like.
He's kind of not.
He's kind of chill.
Yeah,
Like, he's kind of pretty chill. Like, he's not gonna like smite you, and like it's like kind of like I don't know. I told you it was a bad ending point.
Yeah,
but like he's kind of chill.
It's a potential cliffhanger. It'll be a cliffhanger either way, but whether or not we come back to it, that's the real cliffhanger.
If you want to learn more about that topic next week,
leave a comment or something.
Our one viewer.
You know, if you want to go, you know, we'll call that our fallback idea. No, that can't be fallback. That requires a lot of planning. But we'll call that our idea for next week. But if you guys have a problem with it, let us know, and we won't do that one.
No, we'll still do it to smite you. Not smite you, spite you. Spite you.
We're spitting images of God right now. But, so let us know.
This was
feedback
science.
is good. Please give us feedback. And this Saturday,
Cafe Youth
with a partially renovated youth room. It's at least partially.
We don't have any money left, so the youth room is going to look terrible if you don't donate.
We actually got some more money. Just
Wink, wink.
still not enough.
Donate. Donate.
A poor child is asking. I'm just kidding. We're just kidding.
For $1 a day.
No.
But, come on out. It looks better. We got the stage backdrop changed.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
It's not purple.
It's not purple, and we don't have, like, what was it, green tape? And no, it was green lights, gray tape, purple
And
wall, wooden crates. It's better. We're not going to tell you what it is because you have to be there to find out.
That's a good marketing technique.
So, thank you for watching. Feedback is always appreciated. Liking, commenting, subscribing, blah, 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 etc., etc.
Peace out. Jesus loves you. Hashtag speaking from the heart. Be Fletcher.
2 weeks. See you again. Goodbye.
Bye.